We really appreciate you being here and supporting the strategic planning community. So let's start with a round of applause. Thank you, everyone, for being here. All right, so introductions. So I'm Michelle. I am one of the APG board members, and this is Mark Tomblin, who's been our Fearless Chair for 11 years now, I think. And so we are really excited, along with many of you here, about this initiative. We've been in Canada for about 10 years now, doing different events, different bits of training, never launched a book, and as I think I've told many of you, we never will ever again. But we're really glad to launch this tonight. So, people have been wondering why the hell is it called Eat Your Beets, and I think I kind of lost it at some point. But what initially inspired it, some of you may be familiar with Eat Your Greens, which was curated by Weimer Snyders, and it was pulled together by APG UK. So he had this brilliant idea of bringing together very big name planners, strategists across Europe. I think there were maybe some in North America as well. And he curated this book. They all wrote an essay. I believe it was around marketing science. We liked the idea so much we stole it, and here we are. So the math, why is it called Beets? This is as mathematical as it gets. So beets are green, Canada's red, and so beets are sort of red. We realized partway through that tomatoes are fruit, so we could not call it Eat Your Tomatoes, and it doesn't really quite have the same ring. But that's where Eat Your Beets came from. And now Weimer just actually kept asking us multiple times over and over again, what is up with beets and Canadians? Because we were actually quite worried that he was going to sue us at one point for taking the name, because we started promoting it on LinkedIn. And at one point he said, I wonder where they got the name for that book. So at that point we decided to reach out and actually ask him to write the foreword. So he's a very huge supporter of the book, and we're grateful to have him. And so that's where this name came from. But you may be wondering, so I should have backed up and said, where did Eat Your Greens come from? And this is built on a philosophy that we share with the APG UK as well, that we believe very much that planning is a kind of continual sport or thing that you have to continually improve upon. It's not kind of a one and done. And I think that's why it's so exciting we recruited 27 authors, 27 different perspectives. Everyone has a different skill set. And we are continually learning from each other. And so this is a way to exercise and feed our bodies, give our craft the nutrients we need to continually get better at what we do. So these are all the people, the great people. Again, I don't know, we'll keep round of applause maybe for these 27 authors. So when Mark and I had this idea to compile this book, we reached out to a bunch of people. We really didn't know what they would say, and every single person said yes, which was amazing. Used their time to put an effort to write an essay or an article for us. What's also really interesting about the authors that are on this list, I think that there was originally 24 authors. And I don't know if some of you remember, we did this wild card vote where we got a bunch of people who maybe wanted to have one of three places in the book. They could put up an idea for the article, and then it was like kind of Hunger Games where we would let people decide, let the people choose what they wanted in the book. And there were three people in particular I want to call out. So Rory Petty, where is he? Rory Petty. We also have Rebecca Lyttle. Stephanie Freeman also was a part of the wildcard edition. And it was actually really striking to see the votes, because there were some people who kind of didn't really try that hard and just kind of maybe promoted themselves a little bit on LinkedIn. There were other people who obviously spoke to their mom and all of their family and friends, because they got a huge number of votes. So these three won by a clear margin. It's fantastic to have you as additions into our book. So enough chatter. I'm going to hand it over to Mark, who's going to take you through what's in the book and talk about the different chapters.
Right.
Oh, I'm in the way.
Thank you, Michelle. It's working. Excellent. Yes. So obviously, when people write, I mean, to Michelle's point, when people are writing, for the love of it, you can't brief them. You can't say we want author A to do an article on B. So when they came in, we then did a great planner thing, because the great thing about planners is they always put things in buckets. Yeah. So sort of if you didn't get that joke, then it's probably time to refresh your planning skills. Anyway, so here they are, and the book's divided into 5 sections, as you can see: brand beginnings, brand love, brand impact, brand collaborations, and good brands. And as you said, so the idea is that there's stuff in here which is what we call solid advice for people starting out, and also people coaching people. Brand love, the idea of the importance of injecting emotion into brands and brand world. I mean, one could have a debate for. This is not, by the way, a topic for an APG event, but one could actually have a whole evening on brand emotion. But obviously, I wouldn't be allowed to be there because I'd just bore everybody. Brand impact. How do you make your brand stand out? Because without that, there is nothing. Brand collaborations, actually this growing sense that actually planning is a collaborative endeavor or it's nothing. Although I would argue it's always been that way, really, or it should have been. But that's good stuff. And then good brands, which is a kind of emerging space, really, about how do you actually prepare brands for a better future. So those are the buckets. And so these are the authors in their buckets. See what we're doing here? It's kind of brilliant, isn't it? Sort of, yeah. This is called a structure. And the other thing it's worth mentioning, because the other problem with doing anything, and it's kind of amusing because, as Michelle said, and I don't have any of the scars that Michelle and Lucia, our treasurer, have in developing this. But having watched from afar, I know how problematic this is. One of the issues with actually publishing on dead trees, unlike social media, is that it's a moving target. So you get your 27 authors, and you get your essays in, or pieces, articles, call them what you will, and then a year later you publish a book, and of course everybody's changed jobs, which is unbelievably irritating. But anyway, so these are
Jeff, where are you?
Yeah, I think we've gone here with the actual jobs they're doing now, haven't we? I think.
Yes, but not in the book.
No,
Sorry.
not in the book. Yes. So if there's that's why. Don't feel too aggrieved, okay? If so, I mean, after all, you've been promoted and you've got a great new life, so let's not get too upset. So the authors here, we got Sub, who's still at Cassette, I believe, isn't he? Yes, good. Jeff, who moved on, but they were at the time working together, in case you thought it was a bit weird that they're writing this article together. And then we got the wonderful Jean-Claude, who's come all the way from Montreal to be with us this evening. Thank you, Jean-Claude.
Where is Jean-Claude?
He's definitely here. There he is, the man himself.
We actually have a few folks from Montreal here, which is really great.
Yeah,
and
I know, it's
Vancouver.
brilliant,
Thank you for coming out.
The Montreal posse, I believe. Sorry, that dates me rather, doesn't it? Although Jean-Claude's not wearing his toque.
Yeah.
Are you feeling all right, mate? Okay, good, brilliant. Okay, moving on. So then we got the brand love. We have Shari, who we saw earlier. From the garden, we've got Kristy and Shireen talking about these things. So we've got how to cultivate long-term brand love, how to move humans as humans, and probably one of the, I don't know, you could have like a private competition for the best title in the book. This would be one of the contenders, which is The Dance of Creative Strategy.
Yeah, and I would actually like to say the reason that Mark knows these chapters so intimately is because our proofreader completely ghosted us partway through this project. And so he single-handedly, it's actually great that I think in the UK you might have a much higher standard for grammar in English than we do here in Canada, because I feel like commas are subjectively used these days. And so it was actually really great to have Mark's a ton of time put into this on his perspective.
Thank you. A hidden talent for sub-editing. Yeah. Next up, the next bucket, brand impact. And again, it's not like we had to have the same number of people in each bucket. This is a classic, way of bucketing creative routes in a pitch, isn't it? That thing the CEO really liked, the one that's anyway, that bucket one. Bucket 3, brand impact. This is another joint submission. Uta and Nicola from Vancouver. Fanny, who's here tonight, Dino, who was at Gut when he rose, and Catherine Kelly from that's the Newfoundland, yes. The Newfoundland Labrador case history, absolutely. So one of the things, by the way, I really like about this book, very excited about it, I'm so excited, I mentioned it in the foreword, is that it genuinely represents the entire breadth of the country, which is fantastic. and that is, lots of bad things happened in COVID, but one of the best things about COVID was actually allowed us to become a truly national organisation.
Yeah.
By going virtual. So.
And what you may notice is that Catherine Kelly is not a strategic planner, but we actually have strategic thinkers in this book because there are no planners in Newfoundland that I know of, unless anyone else does. So we broadened the scope, but I don't think, I think that really just adds to the depth and rigor of the thinking.
And then more brand impact stuff. Got Max and Heather from Zulu. How to start a fibre strategy. Yes, and thank you to Zulu for hosting this evening in your magnificent offices. Very nice. Jack, all the way from Vancouver, another ex-colleague. By the way, there's a sort of taxi reunion going on here subliminally. There'll be a small prize for people who can spot all the people who used to work at Taxi. I've given them away though, haven't I? And there's Jack, Rebecca, and Rory with their subjects here. The brand collaborations, another cracking title, Media is the Egg. I think that's a reference to chickens and eggs. When I was doing the sub thing, I got really confused. The words all started to look the same, and I rang Michelle up and said, "What does she mean?" And she said, "I think you need to take a break."
I feel like we're too quiet. Is Sarah here? I feel like, raise your hand. We can acknowledge you. Thank you so much. An awesome article.
Yes, very good.
If you're flipping through the book, I mean, we love all our children the same, but I really, really enjoyed that article. So make sure you have a read of that one.
Yeah. Sammy from Initiative and Florian, how to become
both
effective
up at the
man.
front.
Yes,
you're going to hear from them in a minute.
Thanks, guys. And this is the brand collaboration bucket. We got Brittany and Thomas from No Fixed Address.
Where are you guys? You were
They're
here.
just there.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yes. They'll be speaking later. Michelle, who's head of strategy at Huge, although I think she's been promoted.
She's in New York. Yeah, she just got promoted head of strategy.
Yeah. Oh, well done. I'm very impressed. You see, there you go. That's very impressive. And Umar with...
Where's Umar? I saw him. There you are. Oh. Thank you. And then the last section, good brands, preparing brands for a better future. We've got David at Wavemaker, Stephanie. Stephanie's here.
Yeah, Penny from Vancouver.
Penny, thank you for coming from Vancouver.
And Catherine from Think TV.
All right, so Tam and Mihir, where are they? Where is Tam? I haven't even met Tam. Mihir, Tam, it's so nice to meet you. Tam and I have exchanged a crazy amount of Slack messages, mainly over the weekend, which is awful because she has a really busy schedule. If everyone could go and say a huge thanks at some point to Tam and Mihir tonight. We are not for profit. Sadly, this doesn't make you want to work for us, but we don't pay our people. And so they put a ton of hours into this. We really appreciate it. The book looks so good. Mark and I do not have these talents. No. So huge thing. Round of applause for Tam and Mihir. There's another person who likes to sink into the backdrop sometimes, Lucia. She's back there, see what I mean? There would be no, quite literally, APG or book without Lucia. So Lucia joined us a few years ago now as our finance director. She thought she was just going to be doing bookkeeping. She has been managing our member database. She had to work out why our books were stuck in customs. She had to sort out inventory. There's actually an ISBN number on here, which is actually pretty official looking. That's all Lucia. So huge thanks to Lucia as well for all of her hard work with this. Sponsors. We would not be here tonight without our sponsors. Thank you. Raise your hand, do something. I feel like, does someone want a cowbell? Because I feel like, again, we're too quiet. Let's celebrate being here tonight. Gray, Tank, Florian, thank you for sponsoring us tonight. Broken Heart Love Affair, where's Kristy? There you are, thank you. We've got Zulu, of course Zulu. Zulu's here, thank you. Full Punch, Jack, thank you. Initiative, Sammy, Stephanie. Pigeon, sorry. And No Fixed Address. Thank you so much for helping us out. Really helped in terms of helping us keep the ticket price accessible so that we could have a sold out crowd tonight. This is the first ever sold out APG event. So it's like pretty good. Okay, enough. Speakers. Here's everyone that's going to be speaking tonight. And I believe first up is Max and Heather. We have put a strict 7-minute time limit. I have a cowbell. I will call you off the stage. So on to Heather and Max. Oh, you have, okay, yeah, that's for recording.
Oh.
So if you want to take
So we get
3 and
everything?
4, yeah, you get everything. Oh, Spencer's gonna,
Do we stand? Do we sit?
you can do whatever you
Whatever
like.
you feel comfortable doing.
This is the dress we were talking about right now. I would say go with your heart. I just want to like out. This is your office. No. Oh. Should we start?
I started. Oh, wait. I need my cowbell here. Sammy. Let's give Sammy the clicker. Oh. Can you put that on your... Oh, you want both?
No.
We need two.
Just one. So this is, what number is this? 3.
Check. All right, I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it because I'm scared of Michelle's cowbell. Hey, for those that don't know me, I'm Sammy. I'm the CSO initiative.
Oh, no,
currently
it's just
I'm
that
happy
it was an
with
extra one
5
because there's
people,
only
so
one person.
So if I seem
Okay, sure.
tired or grumpy at any point, it's because I am.
Oh, is this
So
one?
I
It's
wrote
not this
about
version?
how to build fame and flow and
because
why
of
we
it.
should abandon this toxic debate of brand versus performance. So what's my beef with brand versus performance? Well, what I wrote on the article is, first off, these are two sides of the same coin, so it's a bit silly that we even put them in opposition. But because we have put them in opposition, there's a few ramifications I wanted to talk about. So one is the impact that it's had on culture, which I'll speak about shortly, and the other is the impact that it's had on our work and making our work even duller throughout the years. And it really stems from the seduction that performance promises to bring. In a lot of ways, the term brand actually has bad branding. Because if you're in a boardroom with a bunch of stakeholders and you say, hey, do you want to invest in this brand work? Or do you want to invest in performance? It's like, yeah, I'll take the thing that performs 10 times out of 10, of course. And, marketers and just humans in general, we tend to chase what's new, right? We're obsessed with what's new and we're obsessed with more. More data, more technology, more versions, more KPI, all the things. And while that's unlocked some superpowers for brands, it's also come with a lot of unintended consequences. And if you look at the platforms that we rely on the most for set performance, these are the same platforms that are in the news for data scandals, for privacy infringements, for limiting our local news, and contributing to social anxiety, right? Our obsession with performance is fueling and funding the platforms that are built to manipulate, distract, and divide us. It's a little bit of a different tone than that. Look, it's a hard truth, it's a shitty truth, but it's a real truth. And in our industry, we love to say, well, we aren't saving lives. But if you're a strategist, a marketer, anyone that touches a brand, there is a real responsibility and accountability that we have for what we put out in the world. And I believe the intentions were good, right? We said we want to do right message, right time, right place. But all that led to is us creating a bunch of stuff that people don't care about and stalking people on the internet. To the point we don't even feel our dinner conversations are sacred because it's liable to show up as an ad on your phone the next day. So look, I'm not saying all algorithms and platforms are the devil and we should avoid at all costs, but I am saying we have lost our balance as an industry. So I talk a little bit about that in the article. The other reason to care, if they want to park the cultural ramifications for a little bit, is ads are increasingly becoming more boring. And boring doesn't build brand, and that doesn't build business. We're forgetting, even if you look at the digital marketing best practices, I know it's brought up, it starts with the premise that people are going to hate your ad. Make it short. Make it work without sound, because they're probably not going to listen. And then put all your branding up front, because they're not going to watch. And, Diego openly has a quote, you need to entertain to gain. And I love that. I feel like we've lost that sentiment that we're not just competing with our competitors or our category, we're competing with the world. And we're actually spitting in the face of most of the data when it comes to growth, because the data's clear. If you build brand fame, it's the biggest driver of commercial success. So this is my favorite picture. This is a rabbit getting high on their performance metrics as they let brand go to the wayside. Because this is really happening, right? We have companies that separate their teams of this is our brand team, this is our performance team, and they're competing for resources and budgets. It's inefficient, and it can be quite toxic as well. And when they have those debates, usually performance wins. Because it's quote-unquote harder working, a term that I hate. And I call it bullshit. I don't think it's harder working. I just don't think we put the same rigor and effort into seeing the positive effects that brand has on our business, especially in the short term that we have with some of these newer, shinier performance metrics. So I think there's a better mental marketing model and way of thinking than brand versus performance. And how we like to think about it is, how can you build brand fame through actually being culturally relevant and interesting? And how do you build customer flow by being empathetic, seamless, and enjoyable? This is not like a cute rebranding of brand and performance. Both the terms fame and flow we didn't make up. These are two of the most studied things in marketing from some of the most esteemed marketing scientists. And there are real metrics that make up fame and flow that you can optimize, measure, and all these things that give you what I think is a truer picture of what true performance is. And it also unlocks much more fruitful conversations. Instead of saying, hey, how much should we invest in our 30-second emotional brand spot versus our 15-second rational conversion spot, you start asking questions like, how do we show up in culture? Do we show up in culture? What are our distinctive brand assets? I don't mean what is your logo, but how does your brand make people feel when you show up? And then, how can we build more empathy into our user experience? So to sum up, what I think the article is trying to talk about is that marketing, media, and technology have this amazing superpower to be a connector, but it also has the ability to be a great divider. So if you're going to enter a fight, don't enter the stupid fight of brand versus performance, but fight for ideas that are going to build brand fame by uniting people in culture and being of service. And fight for ideas that are going to build flow by guiding people on their journey, by addressing their needs and their pain points and having empathy. It'll make for better work, I think it'll make for better business, and hopefully a more responsible and better industry.
That was the fastest presentation because I forgot to turn the timer on. But thank you.
There's a lot going on here.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
Click. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So, I wrote all about how rebels need rules. Is everyone feeling a little bit rebellious like your time? Hopefully a little bit more after the next few slides. So to start off, who doesn't want a bit of audience participation? So what's the common denominator of everyone on screen here? They're Irish, like me, thank you. So how did I end up with this topic? How did I end up delving into this? Well, I think it goes back to the stories you're told, the legends and fairy tales as a child. Looking out at the world and seeing little old Ireland on red carpets, on the Olympic stage. And I cut my teeth in marketing, started my career brand side, working at Jameson Whiskey, which turned itself from a very dusty old brand into a pretty cool brand that people like to drink. You see it over in the corner over there. I'm sure some of you are partaking right now. So over the years, I've kind of worked with some amazing agencies, worked with some great people, kept notes along the way, thinking about what exactly is it that makes these great brands, great disruptive brands, rebellious. So I tried to put that into a few slides or a few words. So let's go through it and give you a bit of an insight. So number one is really about finding your truth. And that sounds a bit generic. What do you mean, Rebecca? But it's really about laying it all out on the table, getting deep, looking at the good, the bad, the ugly, and making sure that you are so clear on your brand. The brand you're working on, you're ensuring that everyone within that company that touches the brand is eating, sleeping, breathing, repeating what the brand stands for. So this year at Cannes, Gut did a great presentation on the one word. What is that one word that your brand can own, live up to, and really set yourself apart in the world? I feel like I'm talking really fast. Sorry.
It's okay, just
So some
breathe.
examples of how that goes, some examples from out in the world. Nike did a great job of this. They know who they are, they know what they want to do. Great example of it is the Kaepernick campaign. So they knew that was gonna, turn some eyes, maybe cause a bit of controversy, but they did it anyway. And after that, their sales, their share price is the highest it's ever been. Counter to that, if you look in the world in the last couple of years, an example of how not to do it is Bud Light. So they, partnered with a trans influencer and then got some backlash and said, ooh, reverse, we're not doing this. And they're still trying to recover from that. So it's really about being true and continuing that. Number two, align with your tribe. So it's really not about having followers whenever you're trying to be a rebel or trying to be a disruptor. It's about finding people who align with your values, align with you, and having that sense of togetherness. So if your brand stays true to itself, it naturally attracts the people who share similar spirits. if anyone's ever worked in the booze industry, you'll probably have heard of Brewdog. So Brewdog are arguably one of the first mass craft breweries that have done disruption really, really well. And they actually opened it up to people that love their brand to become equity partners in the company. So the equity for punks. I'm gonna take some water. Okay, number 3. Face the reality. So when you're gonna become a rebel, it's not an easy path. You're really, you're walking that path alone. And I think a great example of that is Patagonia. So Patagonia has really been a trailblazer in everything that they've done, particularly in the sustainability space. So what do you think? What are we all here to do? What are we trying to do with the brands that we work with? Sell more shit. But they really go up against it and say, don't buy this shit. Use what you have for as long as you can. So, as I said, they're the trailblazers. They're, they find their tribe and they're doing extremely well from it. Brace for impact. Being a rebel is fun. It can be fun, but it's not always going to be easy. So sometimes you're going to do something a little bit risky, and it could go really well, and you ride that wave of success. It could go not so well, and you have to kind of pick yourself back up, try again, and resonate with your consumers. So an Irish example here, of course. Has anyone heard of Paddy Power? Yes, Paddy Power, they are known for being rebellious, being incredibly mischievous. I think their head of marketing was actually called the head of mischief. So this was an example of at a rugby match in Dublin, Ireland versus England. They were, tipping off that England were going to lose. So it was around the time of Brexit, and it was like, why not come back from your weekend in Dublin with something worthwhile? So knowing that a passport from the UK is maybe not that great any longer in the European Union, so why not come back? You may have lost, but at least you're coming back with an Irish passport. You can travel around Europe. So if you haven't heard of them, go look at them. They've done some wacky stuff. Arguably, their around the rumour mill in Ireland is that their legal budget was often as large as their marketing budget, because some of the stuff is a little bit dodgy. And finally, trust your gut. So knowing what we do day in, day out, we know we can feel it in our body whenever we crack a brief, whenever we're excited to share that with our clients. There's something really to be said about trusting your gut. Your gut instinct becomes a compass in the vast sea of possibilities. If you know your brand, so going back to stay true, know your brand and never forget it, it'll never guide you wrong. You think of like with death, I'm sure we've all seen some deaths throughout the years, but they decided to go completely differently to the rest of the water space and murder your thirst. And time again, they've just really pushed boundaries and they're kind of killing it. I think we'd all love to work on it. And then finishing up, are you all up for the challenge? So you've got some of the best minds in Toronto and Canada and across the country. So it's up to us. We have such strong impact on the brands that we work on that it's up to us to kind of bring that rebellious spirit, challenge our clients, and try and push and move the industry forward. So hopefully you're all up for the challenge.
Now for someone not from Toronto.
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Dayan, and for those who might be wondering, the answer is yes. My middle initial is N, so I'm Jack and Dayan, but there's no relation. There's not an M, I promise. So my essay focuses in on what it takes to throw a full punch and do work that really stands out. There's 3 core things that I talk about. So the first is to stand for something. And this is really important because if you think about it, it's really challenging being a marketer. There's a lot going on, right? 84% of us say that the world is more angry than it's been in the past generation. And that societal anger is actually becoming brand anger, where you're 3 times more likely to seek out brand revenge, which I didn't even know about, brand revenge, than you were in 2020. The world is divided. There's a left and a right and nothing in the middle, and we saw some of that last night on the date, right? And the world is in existential crisis. We're seeing more and more brands actually make climate change part of their narrative, part of their brand story. So in a world that's divided, with so much chaos, how do we create brands that matter? You have to stand for something. And this is really important. People want to know what you believe in, what your brand values are. According to Edelman's Trust Barometer, 67% of us are belief-driven buyers. We want to align ourselves with brands that share similar values. So defining what you stand for, having a brand stance is critical. Your brand stance becomes your point of view on your culture, on your audience, on your products and your services. So taking that stance is part 1. Part 2 is to lose the brief in place of a better process. And this is really important because since the heyday of advertising, the world around us has changed, right? AI, digital, the media landscape, except for the brief. It looks exactly the same as it did back then. The problem is that 4 out of 5 marketers think that we nail their brief. Only 1 out of 5 agencies agree. There's a big chasm between us and our clients. And when we're not aligned from the get-go, we're never going to get to our best work, and we're never going to get them to approve it. I love this Tom Fishburne quote on next shirt. I'm going to guess what the client wants without a quick brief. So this is kind of what the problem looks like. It's kind of, we call it the cycle of uninspiring inspiration or a lack of inspiration. This is what it looks like. The client comes to us with a brief that's full of context. Then as planners take it away and spend maybe up to a week removing all of that context and put it onto a single page. And then what happens is and by the way, we're stealing a week of conceptual time when we do that as well from the creative process. Then we get together and we brief the creative team. And I know we've all been part of fantastic creative briefs and briefings. But we've also been there when we sit together and we read the brief to the creative teams as if they don't know how to read. It's uninspiring, it isn't efficient, and it happens often. Then we move into the sort of black box where the creatives go away for a couple of weeks, there's some internals, and we arrive at a tissue session, which sometimes can be the very first time that the creative team actually meets the client. And we, fingers crossed, hopefully, we've hit the bullseye. So this inefficient and uninspiring process can be quite challenging for the creative process. And we've come up with something that's actually working a lot better for us that we wanted to share. Take what you want from it. We call it the warm-up and the workout. So the warm-up for us replaces the brief. It's actually a co-created brief between the agency and the client, and the creative team has a seat at the table. It's a conversation that we have that really define the parameters of the brief, and we do that together. By the end of the call or the conversation, we have a document that we send out that covers everything you need to know about the brief, and you can check the box. The creative teams have now been briefed. So instead of having a briefing, we do something else called a workout, where now we actually collaborate together with the client, with media at the table early on, with our creative teams. The whole entire agency who's working on this sits together, and we go through some preordained creative exercises. We do things like what we call rapid fire insights. We look at brand associations. We talk about the expected approach as well as the bold paths, and kind of test the waters with the client to see how bold they want to be. And by the end of it, the clients are really excited because they get their toes into the creative process. We're eliminating any of the surprises, not only the bad ones. And we're much more likely now to hit the bullseye. The creative team, maybe we unearth something that's really special. A nugget that they gave a path that they can go down, and maybe they wouldn't have found. So that's really helping us solve that problem. And part 3, I talk about owning the research. I believe really strongly that as strategists, nobody knows more about our clients than we do in terms of their business, their challenges. Nobody understands the insights that we do. We know how to frame questions. We know how to launch all kinds of research projects. But at the end of the day, often clients are going directly to research firms, not to us. We should be the first call our clients make with any research-related questions. We should be able to frame the projects, launch the projects, manage the projects, and get paid for it. We should be monetizing research in-house at the agency the way it used to be back in the 60s, back when planners held research close to them. And there's a reason why this is so important, because often we're being given a dump of data, and we're told, make the brief out of this. We've spent the money now, here's everything you need to know. And it's coming at the expense of our ability to get out into the field, which is the most enriching experience you can have as a planner. When you're out there making observation, putting yourself in the shoes of our customers and experiencing things that you normally wouldn't experience. That's the most enriching part of what we do. And it's sometimes taken away from us at the expense of big data. It's a nice layer to add into and on top of the data. As Jim Stengel says, if you want to hunt lions, you don't go to the zoo, you go to the jungle. And I'd say that we have become zookeepers of data more than we have been spending time in the jungle. So I close by saying it's time to get back to the jungle, and it's time to reclaim ownership of research, and that's how you throw a punch.
Stephanie, you're up.
All right. This big green button, this is next. Perfect. Okay. Hello, strategy friends. I am Stephanie Freeman, and like all media strategists, I'm here to talk to you something near and dear to my heart, and that is target audiences. We've been inspired over the last few presentations. I want to talk to you about really starting to make those dreams and inspiration a reality. And target audiences, why don't I want to chat about that? It's a topic that's seen really a lot of debate in my time in the industry. All debates, there are really two sides. So on one side, we've got the data side, where you're talking about use data to really find the right audience, let the algorithm decide, getting really passionate about those audience segments, those personas, right message, right person, right time. And then on the other side of the debate, you have those people who believe that you should really target everyone in the category to grow, most famously like Byron Sharp in How Brands Grow. And then when you really start to dig into the research on both sides, you see that there's a lot of compelling evidence for both camps, right? And the good news is that's because both approaches do have a role to play in maximizing your brand growth. That's because all good audience strategies are like onions. They have layers. So really the trick is in how you layer them together to maximize your brand growth. So to make all this much more simple, I created a very easy audience framework because I'm a strategist, we love a framework, called the BAD audience framework, B-A-D, BAD, which has 3 different layers you can bring together to maximize your audience growth. Like all frameworks, of course, it is a simplification, but really just designed to make this a lot easier in how you can really plan out your brand growth strategy. So in our first layer, we have B for buyers, who are really looking to reach those people who are in market right now for our product. And this is where we can be really smart with all the data and all the performance tools at our disposal. So reaching all of those people who are in market right now, and our goal here is really on activation. How can we maximize the sales, reduce the friction along the user journey? But because although tight targeting performs really well for activation, we also need to be really careful about resource allocation because broad targeting does perform much better when we're looking at that long-term results horizon. So that's where we have more layers in our strategies. We have A for all, where we're targeting all in the category, and our role here is really in brand and demand. So we're thinking more along those medium to long-term sales results. But as we look at the whole category, obviously there's great advice to be able to reach everyone in the category, maximize our share of voice, spend more than our competitors. But unfortunately, it's also really expensive. And I know all of us are really fighting to get as much budget as we possibly can. So we also want to take a step back and understand how can we define the category in a way that makes sense for our business strategy and our ambitions as well.
So for example, I work on a lot of travel flights targeting the US, and there's just no way that we could afford to target all travelers in the US with a passport. There's just too many of them. So here we really want to just get deep into the category, understand what consumer behavior differences exist, how can we slice and dice the category in a way that makes sense, and then ideally have a roadmap, how can we continue building that category definition, that market share over time. And then our final layer here, layer 3, deep but don't miss out. And here's where we're really trying to understand where is that future growth coming from. So looking at brand and demand, that medium to long-term sales results. Once again, now that we know the category really, really well, we want to understand where is consumer behavior evolving, where is our brand lagging behind. And those will give us these new segments, these new opportunities where future growth is going to come from in the years to come. This is a really common strategy used by brands to maximize their growth over the long term. So we've got Corona here, the non-alcoholic beers, which are awesome. We get big Canadian banks targeting newcomers, as well as the likes of different sports leagues targeting the youth, young people, staying cool. So this all comes together in a very simple layered audience approach, audience strategy, the bad audience framework, really giving you that holistic audience strategy to maximize your brand growth in the years to come. So there's just one word to remember about this audience framework. It is the word bad. So thank you. I'm Stephanie Freeman.
Hello. So, Michelle was talking work in progress. That was actually interesting. When I started rereading what I'd written almost a year ago, right away I said, actually I would have chosen a different title today. So, how to make pairing your superpower, that's what I want to talk to you about for the next 7 minutes. And actually what I did in that article, in that piece, is not think about what makes for bold or effective work, but what can make us as strategists, as planners, more effective at actually making bold work happen and actually making change happen with our work and with the people we work with. And when I started working, I think like a lot of us in the industry, I thought it was all about smart thinking, bold thinking, being the smartest person in the whole room, having the best insight. And what I realized eventually is I was missing a huge opportunity. And what I realized was that actually boldness, which we all want, needs to go hand in hand with safety. And what I mean by that is, we all want both thinking, both ideas. We want to create change in society with customers. We also want our clients to change how they do things. But when you think about it, for most of us, change is actually a scary thing. And if you want people to think creatively, be open to ideas, to be collaborative, the most important thing you need to think about is how do I actually make it safe for everyone to be that way? How do I make it safe for someone to ask questions, to contribute something new, maybe to risk sounding stupid by asking, that one question that no one there is asking. So I realized how can we make ourselves more effective by making it safe for everyone to fully participate. And what I still hear a lot, and there's a lot of if you look at award-winning work or you talk to colleagues in the industry that we just kept pushing and we pushed the client, and they don't get it, so we just gotta keep pushing, or we gotta push the account. There's a lot of pushing, there's a lot of fighting, and I think we need that. We need a lot of persistence. But when you think about basic psychology, you also know, and I know the girl is pulling, but ultimately, the more you push people, the more they resist. Natural, right? No one likes to be pushed around. If you push me, I'll just argue back. So I found that this whole notion of persistence is worthwhile, but pushing is actually not that great of an approach if you want to get people to think differently, to change. So the more you push, the more people resist. And back to this idea, what actually needs to happen is if you want clients to be bold, if you want team members to be bold, if you want everyone to be bold,
What you actually need to focus on is how can I create trust? How can I create partnership? With someone that feels that they can trust you, you're actually going to deliver, but that they also feel that you genuinely care for them, that you have their best interests at heart, you're not just doing this for you, for the agency, they might actually start being bold with you, consider bold things. So trust and partnership, I think, is one of maybe the more underappreciated things that I see a lot of teams stumble with because we don't pay attention to it, we don't care about it, and that's then what kind of keeps us from being able to do the work we would want to do, and it creates a lot of frustration and lost opportunities. So trust and partnership. And then in the rest of the article, I'm not going to go into any details here, I spent more time thinking through and talking about ways, things, practices, habits, little things, big things, I found work really well to create more of that trust, more of that partnership. I'm not inventing anything. If you look into therapy, coaching, these kind of things, they've thought of a lot of it. That's something that sounds kind of boring, like a therapeutic alliance or working alliance. There's a lot of thinking that exists. You don't have to reinvent the wheel about how can I make that relationship I have with a creative team, an internal team, or even with a client, how can I make this an effective relationship that actually leads to change, that leads clients to change behavior. Just some very simple things you can do. And I do believe sometimes we underappreciate the fact that we as strategists, as planners, have a big role to play there. Sometimes we'll be, well, that's not my job, I'm not the account team, I'm here to think, maybe I'll work with the creative team. But when you think about it, we're naturally curious. I think everyone in this room is curious. We can bring that curiosity to the work, but we can also bring it to our clients, to the team, and make sure that we don't go in with prior assumptions, that we don't take things for granted, because that's where a lot of people in teams trip up. So how can we use that same curiosity we naturally have to check all those assumptions to validate? Same thing with clarity. We like to reframe insights, we like to bring clarity to complex matters. How can we use that to really surface and make clear not just what the problem is, but what actually matters to everyone, what matters to the client, what matters to the creative team, to others. How can we use that skill that we have to create clarity about what the actual job is, what is the task of the work. Some of us spoke about co-creation. I find so many times, even in a project, a lot of the work is just surfacing. What is this work actually about? What are we actually trying to accomplish? Many times we understand it in the middle or at the end of the process, not at the very beginning, as some of those linear processes want us to believe. So clarity is something we can bring to the table. And then the last, least not least, is using very simple things like reflective listening. So not just being good listeners to everyone in the team, but also using that listening to reflect back, to summarize back. And again, here, I think it's not just it's helpful to have things summarized, it's also helpful. I don't know if you've experienced that when someone actually really listens to you, your full attention, you feel seen, you feel heard. It's a very validating experience. And again, when we're asking clients especially to do bold work, to try something that maybe will fail, I think that's a huge asset once again to make sure that they actually feel that their concerns have been heard, have been considered, and then if they say yes to something bold, they know that they're not just trusting it in one way. So 3 caring practices that I go a little bit more into detail here. Me could be okay, it's all nice, why so much warm and pleasant caring and listening, and it's not therapy, we're in business. Just for the ones here in the room who are a bit more hard-nosed, there's a lot of evidence that when you look, not just in business, but actually in nature and society, that when you're able to create a cooperative group, so people actually work well together, who collaborate, these groups tend to outperform groups that are much more adversarial internally. So I think there's if you care more about the performance side, there's a big argument to be made that these practices will actually make you better as a group. And maybe for a more lofty ambition, when you also think about a lot of the challenges we're facing, whether it's climate change or some of our big societal issues, or even just, I work a lot in pharma, where you have to work across different functions with a lot of different stakeholders. Being able to cooperate better, not just within your group, but across groups, I truly believe is a skill we all need to develop if we want to create the change that we're all seeking. So I think even in that perspective, it's an important element to consider. And just to close this off, I actually got this inspiration from someone more inspired, more brilliant than I on the Patagonia website, but just want to encourage everyone here to be brave, be bold, but also be kind, and then go get them.
I feel like you and Heather and Max should get in a room and just have a chat. All right, our final speaker tonight, Kristy Pleckaitis from Broken Heart Love Affair. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Kristy Pleckaitis and I'm SVP Strategy at Broken Heart Love Affair. I think I'm probably the last speaker, so I'm holding you guys up from here. So I'm going to spend 6 minutes instead of 7 minutes talking. But I think, you know, when I wrote this article, it was a little bit of a personal journey and personal reflection on my own experience as a strategist working in advertising. And actually, so here's the title of my article. Okay, so how do we move humans as humans? I started my career in user experience, and about 7 to 8 years ago, I made the jump over to brand strategy, thanks to Heather over here, who took a chance on me as a UX strategist, moving into brand strategy. And you know, when I first started in this role, I started to think, okay, well, UX and strategy can't be that different. I mean, I'm analyzing hundreds of points of data and trying to make sense of them and how I move, you know, someone from point A to point B in, you know, the least amount of resistance possible. And, you know, I originally thought that rationality was the job of the strategist and emotion was the job of the creatives. And this was a quote that's coming from me. No smart person said this. It's actually a really stupid approach, so don't take this. I wanted to put it out there and say, don't do this. Because the more I leaned into rationality and the more I took emotion out of my work, the more I was, you know, losing clients when I was talking to them about my brief. I was losing strategists, or not strategists, or maybe strategists, but I was losing creatives when I was briefing them in the creative process, and ultimately, you know, I was losing consumers and standing in their way between falling in love with brands again. So, you know, again, don't do this. So I got into advertising originally because, you know, it was a creative field. I think I'm relatively creative, and I thought, okay, so I can come into this field. I'm not necessarily a copywriter, I'm not a designer, but it's something that I can actually affect people with. And early on, I just felt like I wasn't doing that. I felt like maybe I was going through emotions. I was still new, I was learning, and I was really failing to connect with people, and I felt like my work was just really falling flat. So, pandemic hit. We all were, you know, sitting in silence. We were in our rooms by ourselves, and we really just didn't have anyone to talk to except for maybe ourselves and our therapists. And, you know, I took that time and I did a lot of personal reflection, and I was digging deep into a lot of the emotions that maybe I was suppressing, or sides of me that like I was really burying. And the more I became vulnerable with myself, more vulnerable with other people, I started to get different reactions from them. I started being able to influence people a little bit more, and I wanted to start to bring that into my work. Our ability to move people really hinges or is contingent on two things. The first one is understanding the human condition, and the second one is guts. In order for us to understand the human condition, we need to understand ourselves. We need to understand, why are we thinking the way that we do? Why are we behaving the way that we do? What are the motivating factors for us? What makes us feel icky and gross? What really excites us? And then the second part is having guts and having that courage to really put yourself out there, put your emotions, put your feelings on stage for the entire world to see. And that's a really, really scary thing, especially as, you know, someone who has been very analytical and logical, you know, I think maybe most of my life. So there's 3 reasons that I have learned, you know, throughout the course of my career as a strategist that maybe prevent other strategists, including myself, really being able to affect humans as humans and really move people and ultimately change behavior. And the first one that, I'm not going to touch a lot on this because we've talked about it at great lengths tonight, but the first one is that we're expected to be the smartest person in the room. I think as title of strategist, we are the brains of the operation, or so they think. People turn to us for any, all the questions, all the things that they don't understand, and for us to really set that direction. I think especially as green strategists, as new strategists in this industry, a lot of us tend to hide behind a lot of data. I think we start to point to the numbers when we are challenged on our thoughts. I think we can hide behind a lot of the data, and it really absolves ourselves from any responsibility on whether things go good or whether things go south very, very fastly, because we can just point to the numbers and say, well, this is what the data told us. And we're actually not taking a part of ourselves, part of that emotion, and really injecting it into it, because we are scared to tell people who we are. We're scared to tell people how we react and why we react the way that we do. So that's the first challenge. The second one is that we assume people are rational actors. And the reason why we assume people are rational actors is because that's what they tell us. We look at the data and it's all very much rooted in logic, in rationality. People say, well, I bought product X because of Y. It's very functional in nature, and it makes people feel like they are in control of their own actions. As humans, we don't like to feel out of control. We want to be very conscious when we're making specific decisions. But the reality is that we are humans. We operate on what's called system 1 and system 2 thinking. System 1 thinking, it's 90% of the decisions that were made. It's subconscious, it's irrational, it doesn't make sense. And the reason why we make the decisions that we do is because we're drawn to it emotionally. We have some sort of connection. The third thing is that as strategists, we need to prove our worth with something tangible. I think as strategists, we all want to have some sort of ownership over a domain within the agency, but we are very much a cog in the wheel. We are an input to the creative's output. And I think that's a really hard thing for people to wrap their heads around. We are the ones that are ultimately responsible for setting the direction, calling the play. We are the quarterback. We're instructing the creatives in terms of what we should do. But oftentimes, because it's a lot of the thinking that goes into it, we produce these decks that are hundreds and hundreds of pages. People get lost. I get lost, or used to get lost in some of the stories that I was telling, because I didn't know which way was up or which way it was down on slide 89. But it doesn't have to be complicated. We have to simplify it, and we have to base it on that emotion. Okay, so some of the key takeaways that I just wanted to outline here, and again, there's a lot more in the book, but the first one is that numbers provide shade, emotions shine the light. We can't hide behind our emotions anymore. We can hide behind the numbers, but the emotions honestly tell the truth. They're telling the reason why people are acting the way that they do, not the what or the how. The second thing is that humans are not robots. We need to remember that we, like our consumers, we are all human. We make decisions that are oftentimes irrational. They're highly emotional. We don't tend to think about them a whole lot. So that's point number 2. And then number 3 is that we are paid, again, to set that direction, not to write a trilogy. We don't want to see these decks that are hundreds of pages of 400 different stats that you can point to and hide behind the numbers. Let's keep it simple, let's keep it clean, and let's help our creatives. You can.
All right, panel. Next. Sorry, thank you. That was our last speaker, but we're moving into the panel session now. So I think it's, let me just, Jack. If your picture is on the screen, please come to the front. How are we gonna do this? I don't know, sit. Microphones, mics. Do the other mics work? Okay.
I'm not good with this.
That one's working. This one works for you.
Okay, run one to the back.
Yeah, we just need a photo for batteries.
Oh wow, that's cozy. Do you want me? Yeah. Well, okay. What are we doing here? I have no idea what we're doing.
Is it too squishy? Do you like? Feel free to. Does anyone want? Where's Mahir? Where did Mahir go?
Mia's here.
Is that a microphone?
He's around the back. Yeah, it's like a.
Do you need this on everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you put it on your like?
Yeah.
lapel?
Good. Thank you.
How about I hold it and we can? Is it, oh, what's this? Oh,
It's so that
here, I'll leave it here on my knee. Okay.
Still working.
Yeah. Does that work?
Yeah.
You know what?
2.
There we go. There's the
Sorry, mate. Quick question. How do you want to do this?
well, you want to just ask them these questions?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do they all have to answer? Do they all have to answer? Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, no, I can. It's great. I'm going to read it. It's okay. You get some warning. Yeah. Okay. Next section. So this is the. We divided the panel into 2, haven't we?
There are
3. Wow. This is a record. 3 panels. Okay. Okay. My role is to read out the question. I think someone mentioned earlier about we never insult creative intelligence by reading the brief to them, but I'm going to do exactly that. So for those of you who are struggling, and by the way, you don't all have to answer the question. So whoever thinks they've got an interesting answer to the question, okay? What prompted you to write the article you wrote? Jack,
did.
No, Jack. Yeah. No, I know. Not literally. Jack, go on. You look interested.
Last year, we were invited to attend a conference in Barcelona, which was this really cool conference of independent agencies. And there were no microphones, no phones, no recordings. It was just an intimate story sharing from some pretty legendary agencies. And they talked about how they win new business. They talked about how they build culture for success. And it was just, you left feeling inspired. And we talk a lot about collaboration in our industry with our clients and with the work that we do. And I think we could do a better job of actually sharing amongst each other as well. And I think the more we can collaborate and share what's working for us, maybe it can work for you. Maybe you take it and it becomes something different or even better. Then I think it can make the industry better. So that's for me, the inspiration was that conference. We're actually going to be speaking at it this year, which is really cool. And I think the idea of sharing is really important for us all.
Oh, thank you. That's very good. Anyway,
Yeah.
shall I read the question again?
No, I can hop in. So I kind of alluded to it earlier, like I'm known as a bit of a collector of things, whether that's trinkets from the thrift or, ideas, photos, whatever. My notes section, I'm sure everyone here is the same. Those wonderful ideas you have when your subconscious is just turning on at night. You think it's the best idea in the world and you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't think so. So I've had this kind of floating around for a while, and then when the APG and Michelle put out the call for the wildcard, I was like, why not try and bring this all into some semblance of useful information? And also from the wildcard perspective, like we work on brands day in, day out. It's what we do. It's our bread and butter. It's what we love. But one thing that I find a little difficult, and I'm sure some other people in the room do, is building your own brand. So that's kind of a tough thing sometimes. So I guess that was another reason why I kind of put pen to paper.
We should chat about that.
Thank you.
We chatted at the start of ours about how fighting sameness is our agency philosophy. I think if you look at it at a surface level, it's like, oh, create disruptive work. But I think for us, we really wanted to take a step back to be like, how are we fighting sameness in everything we do in our process as an agency and our process in terms of our work, but then also fighting sameness in ourselves as we think about the idea of our own personal growth and how we can be better strategists and take ourselves further. We really wanted to challenge all of those internal biases we have and those expectations we have of our work and of ourselves, and try to fight the sameness within us.
what Heather said, and I think it's also just the recognition that as a strategist, you actually can have impact. You know, that there's power in what you do, and to have the confidence in it, and recognize that you can start that fight. You can get the snowball rolling, and actually have an impact on things, and to feel really great about that. So I think it was just a celebration of what we're all capable of.
Very good. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for this group? Because we were going to leave that to the end, but we obviously can't fit everyone up here. So.
And on this couch.
Spencer has a mic. Oh, Helen has a mic. Do you have a question? No. You have nothing to say. You have nothing to ask. Oh, it's Helen's birthday today. Oh, question. Yes.
I feel like I don't need the mic though. Okay, question for anyone. Hot and toxic made me think of it. When you talk about fighting sameness and like fighting the assumption of brand, this brand has always done this, like this brand is boring, like how do we do something different? How do you balance that with also making sure you're doing something that's authentic to the brand and isn't going against what people know to be true about the brand?
I feel like you answered a little bit of that in your
So honestly, like as part of the agency I work with, Pigeon, we have what's called like a face the truth, and I think you kind of spoke to this. It's like the warm up, where you're really getting those awkward conversations out in the beginning. So that's about the brief, but it's really about you've got people on the brand team that have been on the brand team for years. They're like, we can't do that. We tried it 15 years ago. It didn't work. We can't do that. Da, 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 da. And they're coming with all these biases. So it's really about having those difficult conversations, and like we use the term face the truth, but it ultimately is that. It's like laying it all on the table and like getting so concentrated on, like I keep going back to that idea of the one word from the gut presentation, but that's kind of it. Like how do you do that? And then you build up from there. That's your blueprint, that's your foundation, that you're gonna create this kind of bulletproof brand that's out there in the world that no one can challenge you. As long as you're going back to that word, that, guiding principle, no one can come for you. Like you're building a brand off that like very true core element.
I love it. I love no one can come for you.
Sounds a bit aggressive, but
there's a fighting words there.
And I think, just to build on some of that, I think when you are trying to create those ideas and push the boat out and get into new territory, sometimes you have to be honest with yourself and go, okay, that's just too smart by half. Like I'm trying too hard. Like no one would believe that. Like if you can't convince yourself, first of all, like don't go there. And then sometimes even just having a conversation with a regular person and see if they look at you with like that look on your, like that look is a bad one. But you can have a conversation with a normal person and they go, oh, okay, I'm following you. Like, but keep going.
I have a question. I don't think I need a mic either, but Heather and Maxine, the one thing you said I really liked, I said all the things you said I really liked.
But if you had to pick one.
Right. The one thing that really struck me was no books you have to read. Be interested, become interesting. I love the books I buy. I agree though that if I'm stuck in the books, if you only read advertising, only do advertising, you have to do something bigger than that.
I don't know if this is helping our book.
Buy this book.
Exactly this book.
Buy this book. I think I fucked up.
Hopefully sales were before.
My question is, you said be interested, become interesting. What's the one thing that you think made you the most interesting?
The most interesting? Oh. I don't think I'm the most interesting.
Well, it makes you more interesting, I guess.
I think it's different for everyone. Like,
you personally?
Yeah, no, for me, I like to eat. So I taught myself, went to chef school. But I also just love culture because I think it's like the ultimate expression of all the things that compel us as humans emotionally. So I personally just soak that up. I think I listen to a ton of comedy. I think comedians are the best strategists that never got paid by agencies to do work. But like, that's what works for me and how I can just get my brain thinking laterally. That point is about lateral thinking, right? So the books tell you theory, but they don't show you the practice of life and living. And so you have to go into lateral spaces to find those connections. And suddenly I'm like watching a play. I'm like, oh my God, like that's my brief. Or I suddenly got an idea to come back and tell a creative team about. And so it's just like, people are like, how do you get the insight? And you're like, it's just all around you to find.
I would answer with maybe 1.5 things. And it's interesting, I mean, so much what we're talking about data and business and all that kind of stuff. I studied English literature in university. I don't have a science degree or a data degree. I graduated with a love of stories, and I think through literature, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or poetry or drama, whatever it is, it's the human stories, and that's something that came up a lot in the conversations, like being able to identify and empathize with human situations. Whether you're talking to consumers, whether you're talking B2B, people in business are humans as well. So just sort of immersing yourself in that and realizing we're all human, and that's how we connect. I think is a really I feel like that helped me. And I think the other thing, which is something I know Heather does as well, I love travel. Going to other cultures helps you understand your own. And when you see what people do everywhere, and then what people do only in certain places, you get some interesting contrasts. And again, that just helps you be human.
And sometimes this stuff is on the internet. Like, I recognize that there's privilege with some of these choices that we make, but we can access versions of this as well too.
I was talking about going to Hamilton.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not that strange.
It's great.
Oh, there's a question in the back.
I actually think all the question askers do these things, just have it in my face so you can read. But Rebecca, you mentioned the Bud Light example, working with the trans influencers and so that. And I think my question for all of you is, what responsibility do you think brands have to culture when they are impacting it?
What responsibility brands have to culture? I think in that specific situation of Bud Light where it didn't go as planned.
But that's where it goes back in really knowing your brand. And there's so much going on in the world where, trends and trending and like this ephemeral moment of our lives we live and our consumers' lives we live at a thumb scroll, and everything just flies by us. So we don't have to, as brands or as kind of collaborators with brands, be part of every single conversation. So that's when you get really true to your brand. That's when and it goes back to point 5 of trust your gut. That's when you'll know if it feels right to insert yourself into a conversation or be part of, a community where you're not going to end up tripping up and causing all of this chaos for your brand, but also really impacting culture in a negative way.
I think both your examples that you shared were very interesting in that regard, in the sense that Patagonia takes a stance with their brand, and they had on their tags, if you recall, vote the assholes out. They're pissing a lot of people off, but they didn't care. That's what they stand for. That's what they believe in. Even your Nike example as well with Kaepernick. That divided a lot of people, right? But it also gave them, they believed in it, they stood up for what they believed in, and it gave them that $6 billion boost to their business at the end of the day. So you're not always going to make everybody happy with your brand and what you stand for and what you believe in, and not everybody should be making political stances anyway. I mean, your stance might be a POV on local when it comes to a restaurant and food. It might be your point of view on driving. That should be like that differentiates you. But sometimes it is political as well.
And just to build on that a bit as well, and I mean, this is opinion. People may disagree. I think in that situation, as an organization, does Anheuser-Busch have a responsibility to think progressively? Absolutely. Was Bud Light the brand to do it on? Maybe not. So I think it's kind of that conversation I had earlier, or the comment I made earlier of like talk to someone about it who's maybe not close to it, and if you get that look, it's like okay, like and it may be a question of timing as well. I mean, maybe you start smaller and you work your way toward it. So I think we do have a responsibility to be stewards of the brands that we work on and really think about like the timing and the appropriateness and if it's not the time right now, figure out how we work our way there as opposed to start there and maybe sort of blow things up in a way that's not great.
Yeah, I'll just bring it back to us as strategists in the room. I think that often we are the ones that are looking outside of the boardroom and into humanity and culture, and can often be those conscientious objectors to say, like, we're in our heads, or we're not going to be following through on this, so let's not make the statement, or it feels off for the brand. And so I think, like, remember that sort of ethical role that you have as a human, but also the experience role you have of someone that has taken in everything around you and is that mediator between what's happening in the boardroom and what's happening in the outside world, and whether, you know, this brand can actually thrive in this conversation, or if we're actually contributing negatively because we're half-assing it, or because we're making poor contributions to it.
Or it's interesting to us, but it's not the right thing for the brand.
Please.
I'm not part of this, but it's so interesting. I truly believe that brands should play a role in society, but that's like my personal view. Having said that, I think it's our duty, and it goes back to what you were saying, Heather. It's our duty as brand strategists to advise on whether or not a brand should be going into a conversation. I'm talking about Molson Coors, for instance, who promoted women, you know, See My Name, who won tons of prizes, and then they go back, you know, discarding or just putting aside all their inclusive, you know, policies because they're facing a position. That's the worst you can do for a brand. I mean, if you're going into a conversation, just be there and make it happen. Just don't go back, because that's going to be worse than not going at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting thing actually. Sorry, go on, Max.
Just a small thing, as I understand it, when everything blew up for for Bud Light, it sounded like as an organization, AB did nothing to help Dylan Mulvaney. It was just like, okay, like, you know, they cut the ties and that was that. And I think that's
I'm
disgusting.
talking about Molson Coors, See My Name, you know, the
Yes,
campaign that won tons of awards recently.
Yeah.
And like 2 weeks ago, Molson Coors just pulled out on all their inclusivity and equity measures internally. Like, it's not, it really frustrates me because it drives cynicism. And we're fighting as an industry against cynicism.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say was actually, I mean, I'm not entirely sure that there's nothing new under the sun, but it is striking that Bill Bernbach said in the 50s, you know, so a long time ago, a principle isn't a principle until it costs you money.
Exactly.
And you know, it is extraordinary to me how many companies still don't understand that. And so much of the whether it's, you know, #MeToo, whether it's ESR, whether it's DEI, all the fucking acronyms, you know, it's like acronym abbreviation central, isn't it? It's this endless performative performative quality. As long as it doesn't cost any money, they all do it. The minute it costs them money, or the minute it looks like it might cost them money, and that's why actually Nike with the Kaepernick thing is such a stunningly good example, because they basically told all, you know, the racist nutters, and let's be honest, there are a lot of those in America, you know, who were buying their gear to go fuck themselves.
Exactly.
And that I think is remarkable, because it's very rare.
That's the role of most brands. That's the role they play in society today.
Yes, well, certainly it's a role they can play. I think the question is where lots of brands choose not to. Well, that's a separate debate, I think. But I'm not saying it's not an interesting debate. But I mean, that is a huge debate. But I think the point is, and that goes back to something I think you said, Max. If you enter the fray, you have to be prepared to see it through. And that's the thing that frustrates me, is no one makes you do it. And they do it and think they can get a quick win on social media, and the minute they get pushed back, they run away, and that's pathetic. Yeah. Sorry, at the back there.
Oh, I was just gonna let you know that no one back here can hear this conversation.
I'm so sorry.
All right, I think
we're expired.
Yeah.
Next panel.
On that note,
Thank you. Oh, there you go. I've got two now. It's like ice cream.
Oh, can you guys come up and answer your questions?
Yeah.
And only 3 people in the house.
There you go.
Okay, everybody in the back?
So we have these things, because actually, where's Jason's going? We're doing this for Seneca. So do it for Seneca, do it for the kids. Because
Yeah.
For the kids.
we're recording for the kids. So this is why, please use your mic thing?
I don't have one.
Oh, wait, here.
This is broke.
Oh. I think maybe you can hold it close to me. I don't know. Let's try.
Right, don't worry, I'm going to read it to you because that's my role. Yeah, I've reached this is the apogee of my career. So if we're going to combine the two questions, yeah. So we're going to go mad. So either answer what impact do you hope your essay will have, or what do you hope readers will take away, which is kind of, I suppose, two sides of the same coin. Whoever feels most inspired goes first.
Yeah, me.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And I'm
Just
recording.
speaking into the button.
Okay. Takeaway again, like why we had this section about like what I would say to my younger self. This is more for emerging strategists. Being a strategist, you're in your head. That is your job, and sometimes it can be a scary, complicated place. And sometimes you think you're onto something, but really. You need another perspective, and I know we've said that ad nauseum, but oftentimes I'm like, hey Thomas, can you just validate this or give me your gut reaction? And if he's giving me a weird face or he's confused, then I might have to go back to the drawing board and get more clarity there. So that is a great reminder for collaboration to get out of your head and to get another perspective.
I'll follow up because I'll talk about the collaboration as well. I think on my side of the coin, experience strategy can often live in the shadows. And again, it's a broad definition. So it's not necessarily just experience or CRM or just UX or CRM, one of those things. It's a broader thing. So like we have Alex here tonight, one of our talented strategists, and Michael was here as well. Michael's more on the brand side. Alex, coming from a media background, he's more on the experience side and thinking about the journey. And I think I talked about kind of calling shotgun. It's kind of interesting that this partnership does exist, but kind of in the shadows. And I think a lot of times with experience, we're told, yeah, keep your title kind of vague. Like you're kind of UX, you're kind of experienced, just call yourself a strategist. I think there's a lane, and I think from our partnership, it's just kind of cool that it's a thing. And I think our essay kind of called out that it can be a thing. And it's a lane that if you feel like you're interested in that experience side, you just want to lift those people up and let them know there's that opportunity to partner. It's a real thing.
Here.
Yeah, for me, it's really, I've seen so many, we already work so hard and what we're doing is not always easy. And then I've seen so many teams struggle with useless frustrations, spinning, work not happening the way it should happen, just because no one cared enough or took a little bit of time to just pay attention to a few small things that I mentioned in my article. And I've also seen the flip side, that when you just don't hope for these things to happen naturally, just pay a little bit of attention to them, how the work can be amazing and everything, the work can be pleasant, so not just the end result, but actually getting there. So I think that's what really got me to talk about that. And if a few teams, a few people after today can, have a bit better working experience in future projects, I'd be more than happy.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions for these three talented people?
So official. We've been talking a lot about collaboration, which I think we all feel like when we collaborate across disciplines or across partnerships, we get to better work. The thing I'm thinking about is consensus building, and that is like a really dangerous place, right? Because you're just trying to get everybody on board. So how as strategists do you kind of trust your gut, stay sharp on your point, collaborate, but not build consensus, because that can lead to very boring things.
No, you go first.
Thomas said a thing about calling shotgun. So I think regardless of what phase we're in a project, it's like somebody is still holding the stick and responsible for the next step, the output, the presentation. So ultimately, if we're in experience land, then he has the final call on what to move forward with. Vice versa, if it's the brand strategy, positioning, creative brief, etc., I make the final call. So that is just one way to avoid, if I'm understanding, pushing things forward and not just falling into bland or let's make everybody happy, because it's sometimes impossible.
So I completely agree with you. I think consensus is the worst thing that can happen. I actually love another approach, which is consent, not consensus. And So I do a lot of work with global teams that co-create global platforms in the pharma industry on top of that. So it's a global team working with many different people, different countries, cultures, lots of regulations, science, and everything together. So really hard to do something that's still unique and effective. And it can take a long time if you don't do it properly. And one of the things I love doing most is I've taken techniques that were developed like in communes in the 60s, and then, in leaderless organizations, holacracy, all of these things that needed to find way to make decisions, move forwards without making it a consensus, and we go like endless rounds until every single person agrees. And I think there's a lot of ways you can build consent, make sure that everyone feels heard, while you're still making strong decisions at a certain point and move on. So I think there's a lot of potential in that approach to avoid falling into the consensus trap.
Another question. Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah, on the theme of collaboration, I know you guys talk a lot about collaborating with your fellow strategists, collaborating with your clients, and building these uplifting spaces. I'd love to narrow that lens in a little bit more on the relationship between creatives and strategists, as this seems like a very beautiful dance as a strategist that we're always just like working on. So any advice in like really building strong collaborative relationships with your creative counterparts?
I think what we've lost since the pandemic, and it's a hard one, is making friends in our agencies. And I think there's contractual conversations we have on Zoom where we're trying to be collaborative and we're in that box and we're trying to ask the right questions. But I think we've lost the friendship a little bit. And that's why we talk so, like you said, in real life is the vibe. Because when we're laughing and we're actually thinking about things together and we're eating lunch together, that's the collaboration. That's where it comes from. Being able to run past someone's desk and ask how their lunch is, and then also collaborate on something. So I think when I think about collaboration, and the word is a little bit overused, I think it's just making friends and being partners with the people you work with. We kind of it's our summer party tomorrow night.
I can't wait.
It's karaoke night, and we're excited. And I think that's what that makes the work unreal.
On that, yes, definitely we pal around, that's a big part of it, but Aurora's in the back, she's a friend of mine, I worked with her at Best Simon. So these strong partnerships happen, but it comes from being yourself, being a human, and not just making it about the work. The same goes for creative people, they're in this business to be creative, so be a human.
Yeah, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I mean, personally, I love structure and process to a certain point, but I've learned the hard way maybe that you need to lose a lot of that process at one point. And I think one of the best things I've experienced is, if you let the creative into your thinking, and some of you mentioned it, if you're like, hey, I'm not really sure what the insight here is, or whatever methodology you have, you let them help you, not let them help you, actually you need their help, and then you can do the same for them. I find that's the best way I found, at least, to create that collaboration on top of what you guys mentioned.
Someone else over there?
Run, Spencer, run.
If I could say collaboration one more time. I was just curious if you talk a little bit about the collaboration between strategists and their creatives. Coming from a more junior role, is there any advice that you would say to foster more collaboration within your team if you're working with your CSO, your senior strategist, your directors of strategy? Because obviously you don't really have much say on what the processes are and things like that. So if you have any advice on how you would kind of bring more of that uplifting, caring kind of thought thinking into more of those meetings, but from a more junior role?
I definitely have thoughts, but I want to percolate on that one for a minute. If somebody else.
Can I just say, it's a
Otherwise,
great question.
It's a great question. I guess one of my ahas was just getting up from your desk. The same goes for talking to your boss. Don't wait for them to give you a brief. And again, the power down piece. Ask them questions and be curious about their lives, and you can start to foster a relationship that way, or with other colleagues.
and just, share a bit of yourself, like what you're thinking and what you care about. That will go a long way.
So I report, just because I report to a guy named Zach Klein. I'm sure lots of people know him. Him and I could not be more opposite people. I hope this is recorded somewhere so you can see this. He's gonna get a kick out of that. But
Where is Zach?
Montreal.
he's in Montreal. He'll be back for the party. You said something that kind of hit me though, and like being junior, you don't have much say on the process and something else. I actually think that's not exactly, shouldn't be true. And if it is true for you, it's something you should talk about and think about. I think the best leader is someone like Zach, and who we aspire to be, are looking downward for that inspiration. If we look upward, we're not getting much. So looking downward, getting that kind of involvement from everyone. So you should have say, and you should be able to like feel comfortable adding your opinion. And I would just say like, talk about it, like have that conversation. Have the courage to do it. And if that's shut down, you should maybe think about who you report to.
We don't know if they're in the room, but
Yeah, I'm sure. If they are, I'm sure.
I just want to acknowledge, I think the question is great, and I think it's a tough one, because in a certain way, I think when you're new in a role or new in a job, I think when you do these things, you're taking more of a risk than someone more senior, just because of hierarchy experience. So I think it's easy for me or anyone, to say, yeah, you should just do it. I think what you guys said too, I think there's kind of a responsibility from whoever you report to in your hierarchy to set that tone. I hope you work in a setting where your CSO or whoever else is comfortable sharing work in progress, making it okay with the creative team or in the account team, others to share, thinking that's not finished, just establishing that as something in the culture, that no one should expect you or anyone else to come with finished thoughts and polished thoughts all the time. Because honestly, I think otherwise it can be pretty difficult when you start out to just do that on your own.
who had safety in their slide? Was that somebody had safety on their slide? But
I had.
Yeah. That's like creating a safe environment for people to be themselves, but also to be vulnerable and be like, I actually don't know what I'm doing here. Help guide me, but also if you have a great idea, like we're all ears. Thank you for that great question.
Great question.
Any more?
All right, we have our final panel before we all get to sign books for those who bought some.
Well, the authors get to sign the book. Should we say? Right, you get one question, not two. So why do you think whatever you wrote was an important message for the Canadian strategy community? Form an orderly line.
Okay, I'll go. I actually was having this conversation today about why I think it's important, and I think this should come as no surprise, but we've all heard the threat of artificial intelligence coming to take our jobs. And this is
That's
one
the next event, sorry.
Well, anyways, this is one of the reasons why I think it's important, because AI is very much a real threat to a lot of different industries. And I think if we think about emotions and how we feel, this is actually the thing and the one and only thing that separates us from the machines. I think machines will ultimately be able to mimic emotion, but they have to learn it from somewhere, and that emotion is not always going to be real. It's not always going to be, coming from a real human. And I think, the fact that we fear death one day is the thing that actually drives a lot of our feelings and a lot of our emotions, and the fact that time is not indefinite for us. I mean, we have a very definitive time on this earth, and it makes us feel certain ways, it makes us do certain things. And I think for us as human beings to be able to inject that emotion that only we can feel is going to be one of the most critical pieces for anybody in the creative industry moving forward.
not to scare anyone. We're safe for now. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, look, it's one of the most frequent conversations I have, and I find it ironic that I talk to brand leaders, the importance of brand, or that they should promote their brand, and this obsession with performance. And I just think we're in an epidemic of really boring ads. System One, if you guys want to do creative testing, and a few months ago they created a 30-second video of cows eating grass, and it outperformed half of the ads in their database. And I just, like, the bar is so low. And I can't remember the strategist that said this, but I love this notion that it's more important to be interesting than right. And I think this obsession with performance has focused on, we talked about System One thinking, and we're emotional creatures, but we're so rational in our thinking, and we're focused on being right. And there's just too much boardroom strategy going on. We're forgetting that we need to entertain and talk to humans. And it was a little bit therapeutic for me because I feel like I have this conversation constantly, and you typically get the heads nodding in the room. And then when it comes to putting pen or paper, taking action and doing something that isn't even bold, I would just say creative and interesting, it's a really hard battle. So let's keep fighting, hopefully.
Mine was a little less philosophical, but what I have seen a lot of in the past is clients, people in the industry, this big disconnect with maybe like what's happening on a boardroom level, and then how can you actually bring your audience approach to get your message out there to the different levels of people looking at, those in-market people right now, people who might buy your brand in 3 years' time, for example. So to give someone something really simple to actually go and start thinking about campaigns tomorrow, and maybe invest a little less time in, those big segmentation studies that ultimately can potentially not be very actionable when you go out there and target your media campaigns. So I hope it helps just simplify all the research out there.
Great. Any questions for this trio? John.
Hopefully I'm projecting enough that this isn't ironic.
You coming over loud and clear, mate.
But each of the three of you, I think, said things that were really rationally correct, but also like emotionally resonant. Like we immediately understood what you were saying was true and important and would make the work in the industry better. So I guess my question is, what do you think is stopping us from doing the thing that you said that I think everyone sort of agrees we should be doing?
Yeah, I can. A few things, but I think one is a lot of the stakeholders making decision on advertising aren't marketers. So that's one. And I also think marketing is a weird profession that there's a lot of marketers that are in it and they're proud to say they're actually not marketers. So I think collectively in this room, we think the decisions we make with marketing communications has a real business effect. But I still feel like there's a lot of senior people, you almost have to describe why your job exists and why you do what you do. And I think that's a big battle of it, at least in my experience. It's talking to the non-marketers or the proud non-marketers about the effect that we can have. It's easier, like I said before, it's easy to say, hey, if we buy this performance thing, you're gonna see where you're gonna get in the short term and things like that. But trying to explain brand to somebody, I think, again, the branding, even the word fame, right, that we use, they all are polarizing in some aspect for those that don't live it day to day.
I think there's a couple of things. I think one, a lot of us, and this is what I spoke about, but a lot of us are operating scared. We're working scared. We're afraid to make mistakes. I think just the commentary around the economy and jobs, and everyone's afraid for their ability to stay employed and always make the right decision, forces us to really play it safe oftentimes, and then we're not actually creating anything interesting or new. I actually forgot what my second point was going to be. I can't. It'll come back to me when I don't think about it, but I think playing it safe, honestly, is one of our biggest barriers to making really interesting work.
Sure, was really good, the second point. For me, I feel like there's just so much research out there, so much theory, that it can be really confusing to make sense of it all, especially when you're just starting out, and you potentially might gravitate towards one thought leader rather than reading that broad depth. And I think we talked a lot about how you need to get that foundation and then take that step back and really see the full picture, get out there into the real world. So I think just the breadth of research makes it quite confusing.
Thank you. Any more questions? There we go.
Should I grab a mic?
Why not?
Okay, I work with Steph and Sammy. I've heard them ad nauseum. This is directed at Kristy.
I was actually afraid for Lucas.
You said it's okay to set a direction, not write a trilogy.
Yeah.
I really like that. Do you have any rules of thumb for cutting the fat? Because I'm the one who writes long and then cuts down hard.
Mhm.
I find my thoughts run better when I write long.
Mhm.
Do you do the same? And if so, how do you recognize the insight? How do you recognize what's real and what's important?
That's really good. Because I used to write those same decks, I think before I would put every stat, every piece of data that I thought was relevant and, to something that I had said, I was almost hiding behind the data and I was hoping that somebody else in the room would actually start to piece the information together for me. And I think this is just something that happens with very junior strategists or people who are just coming into the industry because you don't have that experience to necessarily recognize when something is important that you should hold on to, when you should build off of, and you're actually looking for direction from other people who have been doing this a lot longer. So I used to write those same decks and I would get lost in my story and I would forget what I was actually talking about. I don't think that there's anything wrong in going through that logic and going through that storytelling for yourself so that you can understand it, but I think when you're playing it back to someone, only the most pertinent points are the most important, and that doesn't make any sense. Only the most pertinent points are the ones that should make it into your deck. I think if you have a very single-minded message, you're trying to say one thing and say it really, really well, that's where you start to really captivate your creative teams, captivate your clients, because people understand. And so I used to write it all out and then I would go back and I would start trimming like, okay, does this actually improve the story that I'm trying to tell? Is it adding too much fluff, too much drama that is unnecessary and actually starts to take away from the point? Then I start cutting it. And I think, at Broken Heart Love Affair, I've had the opportunity to work under some of the most, brightest minds in the industry. And Jay Cheney, who's the CSO there, has long developed a strategy and a format for developing strategic briefs that are incredibly simple. And we've cut it down to the point where now we're, I think, 5 slides and we're selling it, first round in the room to the clients because it's so simplistic, but it makes so much sense. And you're just really able to tell a very thoughtful but pointed story to clients and to creatives. Yeah.
Just one tip I got in terms of cutting, sorry, Lucy, I listened to me advice again. But one piece of advice I liked when it comes to trimming the fat actually came from the South Park creators. And they said whenever they're writing a story and they say the words and then, they know it's too far and they look for therefore or but. So if you have a data point that you're talking about and you go and then, and you're that's maybe a signal that you're veering, but if you have a data point, you go therefore people are, or but people are, you might have a richer story there. I didn't make that up, but that was
Any more? Oh, one right at the back. Oh, go on.
I can shout if you want. Oh, okay, sorry, sorry. No, I have one. Hi, I have a very maybe stupid question, but someone said that we should ask stupid questions. So I have a question for Sammy. I absolutely love your approach, but I wanted to ask, how do you sell it to clients? Because for me personally, I have a lot of tech clients, lots of digital platforms, stuff like that, and I do, the whole emotional spiel about why do you need connections with brands. I show all the graphs, I'm sure we all know these graphs about how you need to invest into branding to grow in a few years, and then I get response something like, well, yeah, it sounds nice, but it is expensive and also performance works, so let's stick to this, and then maybe in a few years we'll get that.
Yeah, it's definitely a process, and as good as I think I do in these presentations, it's never been I present it once and we get it done. What's been the most effective is getting the most senior stakeholders, and also so I'm at a media agency, I want to get the PR agency and the creative agency in the room Because the other thing about our industry is like language is a real son of a bitch. So we might be talking about the same thing, but we use different language. So there's a bit of a level set on language. So are we going to use fame? Are we like those things? And then the first step that we try to boil it down to is what are the key things that we are going to measure, and have those be the things that drive us. Because you can say at a high level, hey, I want to be culturally relevant. Let's just say that's one thing, and then you get a brief that is trying to sell more product or being very rational. So if you can get them to stick to this, these are the things that matter that we're going to measure and how we're going to approach growth, and get them to stick through the process. But typically it's like, hey, do you believe in this? Yes. Okay, now let's relook at how we're going to market and how we're doing annual planning, and how are we going to invest in looking at these measures. And similarly to I can't remember the exact quote, but it's like if you have principle, there has to be something at a cost. You have to have those conversations. So we're going to do this instead of something. It's not, you can't be additive, which is also a thing marketers love to do. Oh, that sounds great. Let's just add that to all the things that we do. But there has to be a lot of trust and a lot of communication. And I think getting anyone that's touching the brand to agree from all the agency side is super important. It can't be done in silo.
Thank you.
Actually, there's a question right at the back. Mansi, did you have a question? Sorry. Oh, what? Oh, same question. Well, there you go. Sidekick. Brilliant.
So we have a fresh one over here.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so my question, recently a lot of brands have asked ways that they can embed themselves in culture, and they look towards different trends, for example, on social media, different key dates throughout the year. But I find that they want to know these things in advance, when a lot of times it's in the moment where you're actually part of culture, and I'm wondering what way I can show them both things that we can plan in advance, but also keep on track in the moment without being too last minute and missing it.
Yeah, I can start. This is something we talk about a lot with clients. I think almost every client you talk to has an aspiration of being culturally relevant, and there's two approaches, like you said. This is how we plan for culture, like we know these events are going to happen every year and we can be part of it, and this is how we react to culture. And there's some brands that are very, very good at it, like IKEA comes to mind, Heinz. And for the brands that have that aspiration, the first exercise that we want to do is, what are our strategic pillars? Because to react to culture, you have to know what you're going to not react to as much as what you are going to react to. So that's typically the first step for us, or what are the things that you care about so that if they happen in culture, we can actually do that. So we actually have a budget for some of our big clients, of reactionary budget. But even with that, we've had to take it a step further. And again, the word collaboration is going to come, but we create a cross-functional team between the media team, the creative team, and the PR team, and a senior client that can make decisions fast, because you need a different process. You're never going to be culturally relevant from a brief. If you can get a brief and all of a sudden your client's culturally relevant, then you're fucking way better than me. But culture moves fast and you need fast decisions. There was a post I like to show clients, and it was a famous TikTok guy. He made a Subway jingle about the $5 footlong and to bring it back. It went super viral. And then Subway responded to it and said something like, "This is a fun song," or whatever. And his response was, "You're 3 days too late." And to me, that's a perfect example of like how fast culture moves. And I can imagine exactly what happened, right? They saw the post, they booked a meeting. One person couldn't make the meeting, so they moved it a day, and then they decided to. So it does require a different approach. And again, kind of repeating myself, but the different stakeholders that touch that brand, from media, PR, and creative side, I think they have to be one team, so that if something happens, you can have a quick POV. For us, we try to enlist a senior client that actually has decision-making power. Otherwise, it's very hard to be timely. Hopefully that helps.
Any more? Oh, sorry, you want to far away.
I
Go
was
on.
just going to add, but I think actually Jeff in the back can probably answer this better than I can. But I think there's two things. I think one, you need to be immersing yourself in culture and just being around it, reading, being on social media, understanding what's going on. But then the second thing is, I think you need to understand everybody on the team needs to understand, what does this brand stand for? What are the domains that we can play in, what are the domains that we can't play in, but understanding what you stand for, what message you're putting out into the world will make it infinitely easier for you to capitalize on some of those culturally relevant moments that are happening, again, like yesterday, that you can actually tap into and jump on board with. And also, I think it's what is easy that we can do. Like, I don't think that these ideas need to be overly complicated. They don't need to, last days, weeks on end. I mean, sometimes it's just a post that you put out and then it gains traction, it goes viral, and people are talking about it. But I don't think that we need to overcomplicate it either.
Can I add to that question?
Sure.
So the two accounts that you just mentioned were happened to be Rethink's account, so Kraft, Heinz, Heinz, and IKEA, and I have a massive dose of respect for those folks at Rethink, because I really believe that they're rethinking the strategic process, which we haven't, I think, as an industry done so far. But there's a difference between immersing ourselves in culture and making it a strategy. And when you're building a brand on moments in culture like they are doing right now, it's more than occasions or opportunities. They're actually building on it. This is a strategy. And I'd like to have your perspective. What is strategy when you don't have time to plan it? When you're actually surfing on what's happening? It's definitely like redefining what we're doing as a business.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that you can build a brand on culture, capturing culture moments alone. I think those are in addition to you investing in brand building activities over time. And I think, one of the things that works so well when we think about Heinz, for example, and why they're able to do the things that they do so quickly, is because that brand has been established for decades and decades and decades. People understand what it means. People understand the red, they understand the slow, and that almost becomes a shorthand that Rethink can very easily capitalize on specific moments in culture. But it's not to replace those brand building activities that Heinz has invested in over years.
How can we do it ourselves? Because I really believe that's a new way of doing. Like, we don't have months of planning anymore. That's a new reality. So how can we take those examples and build on?
I actually think, sorry, I'm very conscious of the time. Sorry, but I was going to say something hopefully positive. I'm sitting here like an unexploded bomb waiting to go off because there are so many, and don't worry, I won't go off, just to calm anybody's fears on that point. I think one of the most interesting things for me, and picking on what you've just said, Fanny, is for me, as Michelle said, I actually sub-edited the book, right? So if anyone's got any problems with the sub-edits, aim them at me, don't aim them at Michelle. I will ignore them, by the way. But feel free to email me, mark@apgcanada.ca. I think one of the most interesting things is there are recurrent themes that have come out, and you've seen some of them tonight. I mean, obviously, one is the C word. That's a joke for people who don't like, because obviously in Britain, everybody would get, anyway. The C word tonight has been collaboration. But I think what's interesting is that one of the big themes for me, and it goes to what you were just saying, Fanny, and you three, because you're the last panel, you sort of end up with everybody asking you lots of very difficult questions. But I think there's a fascinating sort of point running through all of this, which is we talk about safe space. I mean, don't get me wrong, I agree, safe space is incredibly important, Florian. Collaboration, incredibly important, all these good things. But one of the things that I come back to again and again and again is something Sammy said, is why is so much of the work shit when we all want it to be great? Why are so many clients signing off on work which is apparently less interesting than cows eating grass? I hadn't heard that, it's brilliant, definitely use that. But why, and a particular bugbear of mine, we know more about marketing science than we've ever known. And yet, as our knowledge of how marketing works, how human beings make decisions, system 1, system 2, all those good things, the importance of emotion, the unconscious, la 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 la. I mean, I started in the business a shockingly long time ago. Right? Charles Dickens may or may not have been alive, right? But the point is that 40 years ago, we knew none of this. And yet we did fucking amazing advertising. And that's not me fantasizing. I'm not saying that all the ads were great. They weren't. But there were a lot more cracking ads. Nowadays, there's just pablum everywhere, right? And I think one of the problems, and we talked about it, and it picks up on the point you're making, Fanny, is I think part of the problem is this obsession with being culturally relevant is we think it's cost-free and it's not. I think there's a huge opportunity cost that we're pretending not to measure, which is, and I will get off my soapbox in a minute, which is that actually all this activity, performance, this obsession with data, is chasing a holy grail that may not exist, just like the actual holy grail doesn't exist. The idea being that if you actually could individually address ads to every single person in this room, our sales would go up, right? No one has ever proved that to be the case, and yet lots of people use it as an operating principle. And what's happening while we're doing this, we'll call it performance, call it whatever, we're not building brands anymore. Even Rethink, and I'm not knocking them, I hope, what they do is amazing, right? Good for them. What they're actually doing with Heinz is they're not building that brand anymore. It's like they are actually surfing on all the years of investment their predecessors did in making those brand distinctive assets, the slow, the red, the la 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 la, all the rest of it, all those good things we talk about and then ignore. No one's putting any fucking credit in the bank anymore. What we're doing as an industry is we're taking it out. We're taking it out all the time with short-term crap. And yes, all these good things we talk about, we need to actually make them work. And the other thing is, you can have as much, someone was down on consensus, and I absolutely agree with that. A very good point, consent is a better word. But actually, without tension in the room, you get nowhere. Without actually, yes, you can be friends with people. So not you, Brittany was saying this. It's great that you like each other. That's brilliant. Good for you, right? I've made so many good friends in the business. But sometimes you have to have a screaming row. Sometimes you have to say, you're fucking wrong, right? And I'm right. And if you disagree, we'll have a fight about it. Not literally, obviously, that'd be mad. But, one of the things we haven't talked about is creative tension. And I think there's a massive crisis of creativity in the advertising industry. And there are many, many reasons for it, and we go on it. Well, and in fact, maybe we should have a separate conversation about this. But I think what's really interesting to me is these essays, this book, have illuminated a lot of, they actually ask as many questions as they answer if you read them carefully. And if there's one thing I'd like everyone to take away from tonight, and I know I sound like a university lecturer, forgive me, indulge me, I'll stop in a minute, but actually don't think that we are in a good place as an industry. We're actually in a bad place, not just because of job insecurity and things like that, and I absolutely hear you on that, but because actually our product is not getting better. And everybody in this room is part of that problem, which also, the good thing is, means we're part of the solution. But we actually have to act on it. And we cannot let clients get away anymore with this fucking bullshit about, I literally, if I had $10 for every time I've had a client who would go, actually John Hegarty, right? John Hegarty, much more fucking successful and talented than I'll ever be, right? He fucking knows a thing or two. And he used to have a brilliant thing. BBH, if you haven't heard of them, look them up, right? Bartleby Hegarty, probably the most creative agency in the world, even more creative than Rethink, I would argue, right? And Hegarty, they used to not do creative pitches. Can you imagine that? Fucking brilliant. They would just do a strategy, no creative work, and if you like strategy, then they do the work. Brilliant, right?
Some of us can imagine.
Yeah, and he said, and clients used to come in and complain. They'd say, they had Levi's and Audi, they were two big clients. And true story, clients would come and say, we love the work you do for Levi's, could you do that for us? And do you know what Hegarty used to say? And it sounds so obvious, but he's fucking genius. He said, no, we can't, because if we did it for you, it wouldn't be right for you. It's right for Levi's. The work we do for Audi is right for Audi. What I can guarantee you is the work we do for you will be right for your brand. And for 20 years, they blew the fucking world away. Where are the people doing that now? That's the thing that frustrates me. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now.
8:02. I've been doing a terrible job, but I don't think there's a better way we can end than with that. Thank you everyone so much for tonight. We are going to move now into book signing, but before that, we just have a few more plugs. Oh, audience question, we did that. Volunteers, please give a round of applause.
Yeah.
These people unfolded the chair that you're sitting on. They're going to fold it back up. They helped get ice. They helped get alcohol. I don't even know what they did. They did lots of stuff. Nancy has been with us for, I think, at least a year now. She's helped us a ton with a bunch of events. Thank you so much to Nancy. Harini, this deck looks amazing because I didn't design it. Harini, thank you so much for your help. Matt from Cassette is here. Thank you so much for your help, Matt. If any of you have been on our Slack, Matt has turned that place from tumbleweeds into something interesting. So thank you for that, as well as Cameron and some other folks who helped write some really interesting posts, thoughtful posts. We appreciate that. Spencer doesn't even live in Toronto anymore. And we've still managed to get him to help us out all the way from New York. Thank you to Heather and Max for letting us borrow his time. He is, has such great ideas. He's been doing lunch. If you want to have lunch with Spencer virtually, he's been great for that. And Helen, everyone knows it's Helen's birthday today. And Helen has been helping out with our training program for the last couple of years. She's done an amazing job. So thank you to Helen. Okay, we are going to move into this one second. Just 1 second. What happened to, I'm missing some slides. Oh, okay. Weird, my slides are missing. Okay, we had a plug to say before. If you have not signed up for the APG as a member, what the hell are you waiting for? One of the most frequently asked questions that I get, you get frequently asked questions, I get, why should I be a member? What do I get? Hopefully you appreciate this evening, that you get this. Mark, Lucia, and I, all of the volunteers, we are not paid. This is completely not for profit. We are though trying to raise money to actually hire someone because we are crushing under the weight of this admin work. We are crushing under the weight of our own success. So if you appreciate these events, and this next one we have coming up, which I think is pretty cool actually, Harini designed this, so it's really cool. If you appreciate having events like this, events like the BIPOC Hackathon, stuff like the salary survey, give us your damn money, please. It's $75 for membership for the year, a fraction of the cost of the ICA membership. So what you get for that is you get to post job opportunities, you get to look at job opportunities on our Slack channel. You get mentorship, you get training, you get discounts to events. We now have partnerships not only with the IPA in the UK, but with Sweathead, with Planning Folklore, Beda Matheson, I think many of you know, and APG UK as well. So the price has not changed in 11 years. Mark and I have had this conversation. So it feels like pretty good value. And a lot of people think that, sorry, I'll stop soon, but a lot of people think that just because they get our emails, they're a member. You're not. Check your status. Here it is. Yeah. Wrong order. Anyways, that's there. These people are members, so join them. Okay. This is the meeting showing you all the work that we put in. So let's just, I don't know, we'll go back. Book signing. We told you that there'd be no books available at the event, but we work in advertising, so we lied. We have 7 copies. They will be going at a high price. Speak to Spencer, he may take the highest bidder. But if you are an author, if you wouldn't mind sticking around just for a few minutes, we've got a table at the back here by the kitchen and another table over on that side where John and Aaron are sitting right now. We are going to ask folks, if you're an author, to sit behind it or sit on the chairs behind the table. We've got red pens if you want to queue up, get your book signed. If you don't have a book, go see Spencer. And that's it. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.